The golden light of the morning pierced the stained glass windows of the Beverly Hills mansion like silent blades. But inside this huge house, what really cut was the cry of a baby, high-pitched, insistent, painful. Downstairs, kneeling on the icy marble, a woman in a blue uniform and grimy apron scrubbed the floor as if trying to erase her own pain. Karen Almeida, 26 years old, Brazilian, cleaner, looked from the corner at the decorated ceiling, but heard only that crying. His whole body trembled. She tried to concentrate, cloth in hand, bucket next to it, but the sound pierced her inner walls, where an even crueler silence dwelt. 6 weeks ago, her baby was stillborn in a crowded East LA hospital. They gave him a dirty blanket and no explanation. Since then, her breasts, still filled with milk, have been painful reminders of an empty lap. How many women have heard a cry like this and couldn't do anything? How many have silenced their pain for fear of losing the little they have? But there, between the cold marble and the merciless luxury, something was about to happen. And when that door to the baby's room opened, not even the silence of the house would be able to hide what would come next. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know one thing. There are times in life when right and wrong are confused, when instinct speaks louder than any rule. Karen didn't plan to cross that line, but when she saw that baby about to faint from hunger, alone, with her eyes turning and her little body trembling, something stronger than reason took hold of her. And when the boss opened the door and saw that scene, the poor cleaning lady, sitting in the white leather armchair, breastfeeding her newborn son, time seemed to stop. He didn't scream, he didn't understand, but he also did not forget. And what did he do next? No one could ever imagine. If this story touches your heart as it touched hers, if at any point you feel that you would do the same in her place, then support this story with a simple gesture. Like this video, subscribe to the channel and stay with us. Because women like Karen exist in silence, and today she just wants someone to hear her truth. She doesn't want applause, but let the world know that she also feels, also loves, and that behind that uniform there was a grieving mother, trying to save another life. The steps were of Italian marble, smooth and silent, but under Karen's feet they seemed to scream. Each step echoed in the wide and empty corridor, as if the guilt came even before the decision. She climbed slowly, pressing the still wet floorcloth against her chest. Up there, the sound of crying was different. It wasn't strong, it was a failure. A weak, breathless lament, like someone who has already lost the strength even to ask for help. The doorknob in the room was cold, even with the sun beating down. She spun carefully, opening just enough to peek, and what he saw hurt more than any memory. Noah was stretched out in the huge crib, his little face red, his eyes half closed from crying. Her little arms trembled with weakness, and her lips were cracked. A sour smell filled the air, the bottle lying on the floor, the milk curdled inside. In the corner of the room, the formula jar had expired a week ago. Karen walked in, almost tripping over the thick carpet. She took the baby in her arms with trembling hands. The little body was too hot, the skin sticky. He tried to cry again, but the sound was almost a whisper. And yet, when he felt her lap, his little head snuggled in a way that tore her chest from the inside. She looked around. The nanny was not there. The boss probably in a meeting. And there, among those white walls and furniture that looked like it came out of a magazine, there were only 2 living beings, a baby with hunger and fever, and a woman who had already lost her own child. Karen sat in the armchair, as if in a trance. The body acted before thought. She unbuttoned her uniform with nervous fingers, pulled the fabric, and exposed her still full, painful, forgotten breast. She approached Noah gently, and the moment the baby felt the warmth, she grabbed it tightly, sucking as if she recognized that milk, as if she knew somehow that there was a chance to live. The noise of suction filled the room. It was almost rhythmic, interspersed with the baby's short breath and the tears that flowed silently from Karen's face. She closed her eyes. At that moment, There was no more mansion. There was no boss. There was no threat of dismissal. Just her, the baby, and a pain that no one saw. How many women feel this and say nothing? How many hide their pain for fear of looking weak? Karen was there with an open heart, giving her most intimate things, and no one would know that. No one would know that behind that attitude was a mother who still dreamed of the lap she didn't give, of the child she couldn't save. If this scene touched you in any way, comment below. Say, "It touched me," or just, "I believe." Because sometimes a comment is all a woman needs to not feel alone. Karen wiped a tear with her shoulder. Noah was now suckling more slowly, his breathing relieved. His forehead was beginning to cool. He moved his little fingers as if he wanted to hold something. Maybe life would slowly come back. But then a different sound. Steps, slow, steady, coming down the stairs, cutting through the corridor. Karen's heart raced. She looked at the door, still ajar. A shadow was approaching, growing on the wall like a warning, and before he could compose himself, cover his chest, get up from his place, the handle moved. The door opened, and the figure who appeared there in silence stared at her as if the world had stopped. But what would he do next? No one could predict. The computer screen still shone on Ryan Mitchell's serious face. The meeting with the investors was over, and all he wanted now was a moment of silence. But it was precisely the silence that alerted him. Noah, her son, had been crying non-stop for hours, and now, suddenly, the sound was gone. It wasn't normal. That absence sounded like a threatening emptiness. He got up from his chair, left his phone on the table, and walked slowly down the wide hallway, where each step echoed like an omen. The automatic lights turned on as he went, revealing the expensive paintings, the imported carpets, the immaculate furniture. Everything in perfect order, except his heart. Noah's bedroom door was ajar. Ryan didn't hit. He pushed with the palm of his hand, and as he crossed the threshold, stopped as if he had hit an invisible wall. There, in that white French linen armchair, was Karen, the cleaning lady, the woman who cleaned her floors, washed her bathrooms, ironed her shirts in silence. But now, with his uniform unbuttoned, he held his son in his lap, breastfeeding. The shock was immediate. Ryan's eyes widened, his jaw locked. It was too intense, too intimate an image. For a second I didn't know whether to scream or retreat. But he stood there, not knowing how to react. Karen saw him. Instinct made her cover her breast with her arm and try to get up, but Noah was still sucking hard, clinging to the life she offered. "Sorry, sir. He was very bad. The formula was spoiled and he was feverish. I just wanted to help." Her voice came out low, trembling. But there was something firm behind the shyness. It was the conviction of someone who knows he did what needed to be done. Ryan took a step into the room, his eyes still fixed on the scene. Are you crazy?" The voice came out rough, as if it was easier to accuse than to understand. "You can't just do it." Karen did not immediately respond. She looked at Noah, now with her eyes closed and her face serene, so different from hours ago. He was going to die of hunger. "I did what any mother would do." The word "mom" echoed in Ryan's chest like a blow. He took a deep breath, confused. Part of him wanted to snatch his son from her arms, to protect him from anything that seemed out of control. But another part, she couldn't ignore what she saw, the baby finally at peace, alive, safe. "You didn't have that right," he said, but the voice no longer came strongly. "This is wrong." Karen, teary-eyed, whispered, "If saving a life is wrong, then may God judge me." Silence fell over the room like a heavy veil. Only Noah's calm breathing could be heard. Ryan ran his hand over his face, took a step back, then another. "It ends. Now, then we'll talk." And he left. The door slowly closed behind him. But it wasn't the noise of wood that stayed in Karen's head. It was his gaze, that gaze that mixed fear, surprise, and something else, something that even he didn't seem to understand. But what would Ryan do with all that boiling inside? How far would his indignation go, or his fault? The house was plunged into a different silence that night. It was not the comfortable silence of an isolated mansion, but the tense silence of someone who has seen too much and still doesn't know what to think. Ryan stood for long minutes in front of the crib, watching his son sleep. Noah breathed calmly, his chest rising and falling lightly, as if he had finally found peace. For the first time since he was born, the baby was sleeping soundly. No crying, no colic, no shock, just a light, restful sleep, and full of questions that Ryan didn't know how to answer. He pulled the blanket up to his son's chin and felt a tightness in his chest. Karen's face nursing Noah came back to mind like a portrait etched in fire. It was disturbing, intimate, but most of all, it was an image of love. That baffled him. There was nothing to doubt. The baby needed that woman and somehow, inexplicable even, seemed to know her. Ryan couldn't understand his own reaction. He didn't have the courage to fire Karen, but asked her to leave. He said they would talk the next day, and she went without resisting. She took the subway alone, her uniform wet from the rush, her breast still sore from the abrupt interruption of breastfeeding, and disappeared through the city as if she had never existed there. Meanwhile, Ryan sat in the armchair in the room, where hours earlier she had been with Noah in her arms. He ran his hand over the backrest, thoughtful. He remembered his wife, who died 2 months ago in a delivery full of complications. She wanted so much to be a mother, and he, despite the pain, was trying. But grief was still a daily visitor, and now, mixed with guilt, a new feeling arose: doubt. The entrance door slammed hard. It was nearly 9 o'clock at night when Ashley, the nanny, entered the house with luxurious bags in her hands, talking loudly on her cell phone. She laughed at something, said, "I'm just going to stop by the baby's room before going upstairs," and didn't even notice Ryan sitting in the dim light in the living room. He watched silently. Ashley went to the kitchen, put down the bags, and took out of her bag a small carton of powdered milk, labeled in Spanish. "I bought the special formula that annoying pediatrician indicated," he said. Ryan stood up slowly. He looked at the Nordstrom bags, full of new clothes. Too many bags for those who supposedly went only to the pharmacy. "Where were you?" he asked, in a cold tone. Ashley smiled embarrassedly. "At CVS, hey. Everything was sold out. I had to go to Pasadena." Ryan crossed his arms. "What about designer bags?" She hesitated. "Oh, I stopped quickly at the mall. I went there to solve some personal things. But Noah was sleeping, right? I thought it would be no problem." Ryan didn't answer. He just stared at the floor for a second, then returned to Noah's room. He closed the door slowly, but inside, something was beginning to bother him. Karen's voice still echoed. "He had a fever, sir. I was going to die if I didn't do anything." And now, seeing his son sleeping so peacefully, Ryan no longer knew if Karen's attitude was an invasion or a rescue. What if she was right all along? What if, that afternoon, he had witnessed something greater than he could understand? Doubt throbbed like a truth he didn't want to accept. But what he discovered the next day could change everything. The next day, even before the sun fully rose, the house was already in motion. The coffee exuded that strong smell that took over the kitchen in the first minutes of the morning, but the aroma did not bring peace. It was a busy day. Ryan went downstairs with sunken eyes. Noah was still asleep in his room, and the memory of the scene from the day before didn't leave him alone. I didn't know what to think anymore, nor about Karen, nor about himself. Ashley, the nanny, was smiling too much. She prepared a bottle with a rehearsed calm, as if nothing had happened, as if she had not abandoned the baby at the most critical moment. But Ryan didn't want to discuss it yet. Watched. Karen didn't show up. As the hours passed, Karen's silence turned to absence, and the absence turned into noise, not inside the house, but outside. A whispered, treacherous noise that began with a sentence thrown into the air. "Did you know what that cleaning lady did?" Ashley was the first to plant the seed. In the pantry of the house, teacup in hand and a feigned expression of concern, he spoke to the housekeeper, Mrs. Edwards, an older woman with experienced eyes and selective ears. "I entered the room and saw it. Can you believe it? That woman with the baby in her arms, doing something absurd. Oh my God! It was very disturbing. The housekeeper frowned. Disturbing how? Ashley sighed, stirring the tea slowly, as if he wanted to steal the place of the child's mother, as if it were, I don't know, trying to get hold of the baby. These women, you know, they carry suffering and then they project it onto other people's children. There was no need to say anything else. Mrs. Edwards called her daughter, who worked as a private chef in a neighboring house, and the daughter commented over the street to the receptionist of the music school on the back street. And in less than 24 hours, the rumor spread among the houses of Hancock Park like fire on dry paper. Karen became the cleaning lady who tried to breastfeed the boss's hidden child. But in the version of the streets, kitchens and corridors, the story was much worse. They said that she entered the room on purpose, that she tried to kidnap the baby, that she wanted to take the child's inheritance. A young woman, a foreigner, full of traumas. It always ends in trouble, someone commented. Karen knew nothing. At that moment, she was sitting on a bench at the Vermont Sunset Station, waiting for the Red Line train, her hand-washed uniform still damp from the makeshift clothesline in the small room she rented at the back of a beauty salon. In his backpack, he carried a loaf of bread with egg wrapped in a napkin and a prayer book that he inherited from his mother. But she also carried something that didn't weigh on her back, but on her chest, the certainty that no matter how right she had done, the world would always find a way to twist everything against her. She followed in silence, carrying that weight that no one saw. And if you're following this story right now, feeling touched by all this, leave a like and subscribe. It is the most beautiful way to show that this pain has not gone unnoticed. When Karen got off the train and walked to the mansion, she noticed the different looks. The gardener averted his eyes. The housekeeper didn't even answer her, "Good morning." And Ashley smiled. A short, skewed smile, as if you already know you've won. Karen was cleaning the floor in the hallway when the house phone rang. It was Ryan's mother. "I learned of an absurd story. It's true that a cleaning lady came into Noah's room and—" "Did you breastfeed him? That's sick, Ryan." Half an hour later, she called her sister-in-law, then a partner, a neighbor, everyone questioning what happened, all frightened by the rumor that grew and gained tones of scandal. Ryan began to feel the weight of the world knocking on the door, but I didn't know yet that the worst was just beginning. The air in the basement was humid, heavy, smelled of mold and loneliness. Karen lay her tired body on a thin mattress spread out on the cold cement floor after another day of work in 3 different houses, her legs throbbing and her shoulders locked from scrubbing bathrooms and dragging furniture. On the wall, a small window covered with black plastic let through only the muffled sound of the city. Horns, sirens, hurried footsteps of people who didn't even know it existed. This is how her life in America began. Invisible. She had arrived on a temporary work visa, full of hope, carrying only a small suitcase and English memorized in YouTube videos. At first, he believed that it took effort to win. I woke up before the sun, took buses on lines that crossed all of Los Angeles, cleaned houses in Beverly Hills, Echo Park, Glendale, and she would return to that basement where no one was waiting for her. The loneliness only grew when the test came back positive. The pregnancy was a scare. The child's father, an app driver with whom she was involved for a month, disappeared the moment she told him. She said she didn't want any more trouble, that she already had a daughter in San Diego, and disappeared. Karen cried for 3 nights in a row, then got up and went back to work. She was determined to raise her son alone, but the system was ruthless. No health insurance, no stability, no support. Appointments at the health center were rare, rushed, and the attendant's looks said it all. Another poor immigrant who became a statistic. Even so, she talked to the baby every day. He gave names, sang songs in Portuguese, and dreamed of his face. She imagined her first steps, the first mommy, the dark hair like hers. He dreamed even though he knew he couldn't even buy a crib. On the day of delivery, she felt the contractions in line at the market where she was cleaning. Its waters broke there, between the gondolas of cereals and organic products. They called the ambulance, but she waited almost 40 minutes lying on the hot asphalt until someone bothered enough to help her. He arrived at County Hospital with his clothes soaked and his soul in tatters. In the emergency room, her screams mingled with the alarms of the machines and the rush of the nurses. No one spoke to her. The instructions came in fast English, and when she asked, "Slow down, please," she received only silence or impatience. The birth was difficult. Respiratory complications. The baby was born quiet, blue. They tried to resuscitate him. Karen didn't see it, she didn't know. He only heard a dry, "I'm sorry," and then nothing. No explanation, no welcoming. They said she could see the body, but for a short time. They didn't let it ring, they didn't let it hold. They only showed an empty crib and a folded sheet. They gave him papers to sign, informed him that the burial would be collective with other unclaimed newborns. It's standard procedure, and that was it. The life she carried for 9 months was buried without a name, without ceremony, without memory. On the way back, she sat alone on the subway, her legs still numb and her breasts starting to fill with milk. And no one in the wagon knew. No one there imagined the mother who cried in silence with an empty uterus and a bleeding heart. Since then, she has never spoken about the subject. He returned to work the following week. He disguised the swelling of his body with loose clothes. He threw away the clothes he had bought at the thrift store on Normandy Street, and she never told anyone that she still woke up in the middle of the night with wet breasts and her soul begging for a lap that didn't come. All of this was buried inside her, like the son she could not name. But fate, he had other plans. And when Noah appeared in her life with that same weak cry and eyes crying for help, something inside Karen woke up, as if what she lost had come back to be saved. But the world around him didn't want to understand, and someone, behind the scenes of that mansion, was already preparing the next blow that could drag Karen back into the abyss. What she would face now would surpass even the pain of the past. The rain started thin, like a delicate curtain that covered Los Angeles with a veil of silence, but soon turned to a storm. On the marble sidewalk that led to the second-floor office, Karen zipped her shabby jacket, her hair tied still damp from the commute, and her eyes downcast, as if she already knew she wouldn't be heard. Mrs. Edwards called her formally. "Mr. Ryan wants to talk to you. Now." The hallway seemed longer that day. With every step he took, the shiny floor reflected not only his tired image, but also the weight of what was to come. When he entered the office, Ryan was on his back, looking out the window. He had his hands in his pockets and his shoulders rigid, as if trying to hold back his anger or hide his doubt. "You can sit down, Karen," he said without looking. She didn't sit down. He stood there with a humble and firm posture, like a cracked wall that still supports the house. "I received calls. Many. My mother, my brother-in-law, even journalists wanting to know the story of the cleaning lady who broke into my son's room. Do you understand what that means?" His voice came dry, irritated, but with a background of tiredness. Karen opened her mouth to answer, but he raised his hand. "I can't let that happen. I can't become news. You've crossed a line, Karen." She swallowed. "Mr. Ryan, forgive me, but your son was in danger. He was burning with fever, and the formula, it was sour. I wouldn't be able to sleep if I hadn't done anything." He finally turned around. Her blue eyes, red with sleep, were teary. "And who gave you the right to decide what my child needs?" Karen looked at him with a serenity that hurt. "My chest gave in. My instinct worked, and God gave it to me, because the day I lost my baby, I begged someone to help me, and no one showed up." For a moment, Ryan was silent. His breathing was heavy, and his hands trembled. But pride spoke louder. "I can't keep you here. Not with all this circulating. I can't risk it." Karen maintained her dignity. "Are you firing me?" "Yes." "No reference letter?" "It's better this way." "No compensation?" "You violated the trust of the house, Karen." She nodded, slowly. He didn't cry. He took his plastic bag that he carried with the lunchbox and the spare uniform. "Thank you, sir, for the opportunity." And he left, with short steps, without looking back. The door closed with a mute click. Outside, the rain was pouring down. Karen came downstairs, with her heart beating in silence. The garden, so well cared for, now had puddles and leaves scattered on the ground. The electronic gate opened with a metallic rumble, and she walked through slowly, as the drips soaked her clothes and glued her blouse to her body. No one offered him an umbrella. No one asked if she had anywhere to go. On Melrose Avenue, the movement took its course. People in a hurry, luxury cars throwing water on the sidewalk, shiny windows of brands she would never enter. She walked with the plastic bag protecting her head, but the wind tore through any defense. His pants were already soaked, his feet slipping on his old sneakers, and in the middle of all that city that never slept, no one saw her. At each step, a memory, Noah's face, the milk coming down into the empty breast, the unfair dismissal, the name stained by gossip, the image of herself leaving that hospital without her son in her arms, the pain she buried. It came back like a flood. And then comes that moment that marks everything, because there is something in this story that has not yet been said, something that can change everything. And if you've come this far, listening to every word of this woman, feeling the cold of the rain with her, so it stays, because what will happen now, it's what no one expected. Karen stopped at the corner of Fairfax and Melrose. The pedestrian signal flashed red, but it wasn't the traffic light that made her stop. It was a car, a black, luxurious car that braked right in front of her. And who came out of it? It wasn't someone she expected to see again, but it was someone who was about to turn the tide. The rain gave way to a dry, biting cold, which entered through the cracks of the coat and reached directly into the bones. Karen walked aimlessly through the streets of Los Angeles, now just another faded silhouette among the hundreds who crawled downtown with torn blankets and plastic bags tied to their feet. The bag she carried in her hands, with her uniform still wet and a hardened loaf of bread, seemed heavier with each block. He tried to pass 3 houses that day, knocked on gates, offered to work by the hour, just for food. But it was enough to mention reference, and the doors would close. Her name, the one that was never really remembered, was now mentioned with suspicion behind the scenes of the mansions. A rumor was enough. All it took was one lie. On the second night, with nowhere to go, he entered a 24-hour laundromat in Koreatown. He chose a chair in the corner and pretended to wait for the machine to finish the cycle. She hugged the backpack as if it were a pillow and dozed off there, her feet cold and her stomach growling. But at 3 a.m., an employee shook her violently and said that people like her could not sleep there. It will scare away customers. She left without saying a word. On the sidewalk, the neon flashed a lilac hue that seemed to mock her tiredness. He kept walking, crossing alleys, cutting streets, until he reached downtown LA, where the blue and orange tents formed a human labyrinth of forgotten stories. People coughing, screaming, trying to survive among rats, blankets, and remains of fast food. There, Karen discovered what it was like to be truly invisible. She spent the night leaning against the wall of a closed store, her body curled up and her arms crossed, trying to keep up what little warmth she had left. Hunger throbbed, and my head was already aching. The next morning, she tried to eat a piece of discarded hamburger on top of a dumpster, but the smell made her vomit before taking the first bite. He sat on the sidewalk and cried softly, ashamed even of his own misery. That's how Marie found her. A black woman, grey hair tied in a colourful scarf, face marked by wrinkles and wisdom. He had in his hands a thermos with hot tea and an old blanket. Without saying anything, he sat next to Karen and offered the drink. Karen hesitated, but Marie's eyes said, "Accept it, my daughter. No one deserves to die of cold." "How long have you been here?" asked Marie, her Haitian accent scratching her English. Karen answered slowly, 2 days, I think. Marie laughed, but sadly. 2 days is already a life out here. The two shared tea and silence. Marie spent the night with Karen, and the next day she taught them the ways. where to get donations of clothes, where they served soup on Wednesdays, which blocks were too dangerous after dark. And he never sleeps with both feet bare, she warned. They even steal your shoes. Karen followed in her new friend's footsteps, as if grabbing the last plank after the shipwreck. Even so, the body showed signs. The cough became stronger, the eyes burned. On the fourth night he had intense chills, and sweat gushed even with the icy wind cutting his face. The fever came in waves, and the bag with the clothes fell from his hand. She leaned against the concrete wall behind a closed Chinese restaurant and felt her legs fail. He sat on the floor. The sounds of the surrounding city shuffled, horns, sirens, laughter, screams. Everything was turning. The image of Noah sucking on her lap came back like a distant dream, and the pain in her chest reappeared, not because of milk, but because of longing, because of injustice, because of impotence. And then, at that lowest point, comes one of those truths that only silence reveals. There are pains that do not scream. They weigh heavily, they accumulate, and when no one looks, they collapse like rain on an old roof. Sometimes the greatest loneliness is being judged for trying to love. If you've ever felt this way, comment below. He says, I understand, or I was moved, because this kind of pain is only bearable when we know that someone has heard it. Marie approached with a damp towel and touched Karen's forehead. You're burning. This is not just tiredness. We need to take care of you. Karen tried to speak, but only a whisper came out. I just wanted to save someone. Marie held his hand firmly. So now it's my turn to save you. But that same night, as Karen struggled to keep her eyes open, a figure she would never have imagined returned to the scene. And this time, she wouldn't just be an observer. What she was about to discover would change the course of the entire story. The clock was 2:37 a.m. when Noah woke up to a muffled scream. The cry came next, a torn, desperate lament that echoed through the corridors of the mansion like an alarm of something that no one knew how to fix. Ashley ran into the room with the freshly prepared bottle, but as soon as she tried to offer it, the baby turned her face. She pushed with her arms, pushed the formula with a weak moan, and cried even louder again. The other nanny, an experienced nurse brought in by referral from the agency, came in close behind and tried to calm him down with lullabies. Nothing helped. For the past 3 days, Noah had barely slept. With each rejected feeding, I lost more weight. Her cheeks, once full and rosy, were now pale, and dark circles were beginning to appear under her delicate eyes. Her body temperature was unstable, and the crying seemed to carry an anguish that no one could translate. Ryan, exhausted, came downstairs with a haggard face, the swollen eyes, the rumpled shirt. Noah was in the arms of the nanny, but he struggled, as if refusing any lap that was not the one he knew, what he needed, what he lost. The next morning, the pediatrician arrived in a hurry. Dr. Carter, a stern man with grey hair and an impeccable lab coat, examined Noah carefully. He measured his temperature, checked his eyes, touched his stomach, listened to his breathing with the stethoscope. Then he turned to Ryan and let out a sentence that paralyzed the environment. He is not sick in body, he is sick in soul. Ryan frowned. What do you mean? This is affective trauma. The baby lost a strong emotional bond. This can happen when there is a sudden break. He misses the smell, the skin, the sound of a voice. Babies recognize by instinct, not with logic, but with body memory. And something was torn from him. Ryan felt a knot in his stomach. The image of Karen sitting in the armchair with Noah sucking came back in full force. The silence of that moment, the peace that the baby exuded, it all made more sense now. You mean that, does he miss her? Ryan asked, almost whispering. Doctor. Carter stared at him. Maybe, sometimes the most unlikely bond is the deepest, and maybe you've already sent away the only person who can save him. Ryan looked at Noah in the crib. The baby was now quiet, but it wasn't the silence of sleep. It was the silence of exhaustion, as if he had given up asking for help. The house, once full of employees, seemed bigger, colder, emptier. 3 nannies had already tried. None could calm him down. Ashley was already thinking about quitting, and the nurse had called the agency to ask for a replacement, but it was not incompetence. It was something else. It was absence. Noah didn't want to be held. I wanted the lap. I wanted the smell. She wanted the memory that only Karen carried. And Ryan knew it. During dinner, he pushed the food across the plate, the mind far away. She went over all the words Karen had said before leaving. He was going to die if I didn't do anything. And now, he was slowly dying from the inside out. That night, Ryan sat in the same armchair where she had been. The leather still retained the sunken of her body. And there, in the silence, he muttered a phrase that no one had heard. "What have I done?" Because the truth, as uncomfortable as it was already knocking on the door, and time was running out. But would there be a way to correct such a cruel mistake, or was it too late to start over? Ryan ran his fingers through his hair, frustrated, as the phone rang in a deadline for the third time. The receptionist of the cleaning agency only repeated, automatically, "Mrs. Karen Almeida ended her contract with us. We have no current address. We are sorry." He hung up without thanking him. The desk in front of him was covered with papers, resumes, medical reports, pediatrician cards, and a list of red pen scratch numbers, all attempts to find a woman he didn't even really know. And now, he needed it more than anything. He drove to the agency's building in downtown Los Angeles, faced traffic, a crowded parking lot, and a hostile security guard. But inside the fluorescent-lit office, the clerk was even colder. "She didn't leave any personal information, sir. Many employees do not have regularized documentation, so they change their address frequently. We can't do more than that." Ryan pressed his eyes with his fingers. "She saved my son. I need to find this woman." The girl hesitated for a second, but replied only with a memorized, "I'm sorry." Back in the car, Ryan began making calls to old contacts. The housekeeper, the woman from the laundry room where Karen took the uniforms, to the gardener with whom she shared her lunch break. Nobody knew. Nobody saw it. Karen was like a shadow, always present but never noticed. Frustrated, he hired a private investigator, a man named Miguel Lopez, accustomed to finding missing people in the complex web of alleys and forgotten neighborhoods of Los Angeles. Ryan greeted him at the office the next day. Miguel looked at the few data with skepticism. Common name, no valid social security number, no fixed address, no bank account, no social media. "It's like looking for a leaf in the wind." "Are you going to try anyway?" asked Ryan. Miguel nodded. "I'll try, but be prepared. If she wants not to be found, you may never see her again." Meanwhile, the Mitchell mansion became an emotional minefield. Ryan's mother-in-law, Meredith Lancaster, showed up unannounced. She walked through the front door with her heels echoing off the walls and the calculating eyes of someone who always liked to have control. He carried a set of documents in his arms. "You're emotionally unstable, Ryan. Since Grace died, you've lost track. First that strange woman breastfeeding Noah, now this boy without feeding. This is unsustainable." Ryan crossed his arms, unreacting. "He's my son. And I'm the grandmother. I have the legal right to request provisional custody. I'm doing this for Noah's sake." The words fell like hammers. Ryan stood still. When Meredith left, leaving behind a trail of expensive perfume and veiled threat, he collapsed on the floor of the baby's room. He held the pacifier that Noah refused to use and looked around. Nothing worked anymore. The house was intact, but his life was completely in ruins, and deep down, he knew. This all started when he let Karen go. At night, the TV on mute showed images of some protest. Ryan was on the couch, staring at nothing, with Noah on his lap. The baby slept, but the sleep was light, restless. The doctor had said that the lack of bonding affected emotional development. That time was an enemy now. And he felt this time running, like sand between his fingers. It was then that, in a sigh, he took out his cell phone and recorded a voice note for himself. "If I could go back, if only I had listened with my heart, not with fear. If only I had seen beyond the uniform." He deleted it before saving. It was too late for words. But perhaps It was not yet too late to act. And if this piece of his life can serve as a mirror or hug for someone, if this story touches you, reminds you of something, makes you believe that there is always a way back, even after the mistake, then enjoy this video and subscribe here to the channel. This makes more difference than you think, because stories like this only survive when they are not forgotten. Meanwhile, Miguel, the detective, walked the streets of East LA with a crumpled photo of Karen printed in black and white. It showed in markets, churches, laundries, until a woman interrupted him. She was Haitian, and he only said, "I think I know that look." And with those few words, the seemingly impossible quest gained a thread of hope. But what Miguel was about to find could be far more complex and far more painful than Ryan ever imagined. The air in Skid Row was heavier than Ryan remembered. It was the kind of place the rich avoided or passed quickly, with closed windows and tinted glass. But there, between tents leaning against each other, stained blankets and suspicious looks, he walked with restrained steps, open eyes, and a tightness in his chest that did not come from fear. It came from guilt. The smell of accumulated garbage, mixed with that of expired soup distributed by some NGO, and the noise of sirens was constant, as part of the soundtrack of that other side of the city that no one wanted to see. It was at the gate of a temporary reception center, amid the coming and going of volunteers with masks and gloves, that he found a clue. Ryan showed an old photo of Karen to a tall man in a blue apron. The man looked at her for long seconds, as if searching her memory. Then he pointed inside and said, "I think I've seen this girl, yes. Wait a minute." He returned with a thick notebook, covered with duct tape, where names, dates, and symptoms were scribbled in a hurry. There it was. Karen A. August 2nd, fever and cough, refused shelter, accepted soup. He returned August 4th, undocumented, in a feverish state. The name was there. Twice, among dozens of others, but for Ryan, it was like a light signal in the fog. He photographed the page with trembling hands and thanked the volunteer with a sincere handshake. The man only replied, "If she came back twice, maybe it's still around." From there, he began to walk. "Every block?" he asked. It showed the photo. "Did you see this woman?" Some shook their heads, others did not even respond. But in an alley near 5th and San Pedro Street, a man sitting on 3 old blankets looked up and replied, "I think I know who you're talking about. A thin woman, hair always tied up. She talks to herself sometimes. She hugs a blanket as if she were a baby. She cries at night. Shorty." Ryan felt a tightness in his chest. "Does she talk to a baby?" The man nodded. "But no one messes with it. The old Haitian woman protects." Wasting no time, Ryan returned to Main Street, crossed potholed sidewalks, dodged grocery carts full of debris, and followed the reports, as if tracking a soul by the trail of pain it left. A second homeless person confirmed. A third woman with sunken eyes and a sad smile pointed behind an abandoned restaurant. There are some tents there that are more isolated. If she's still around, it's there. He crossed the alley. Boots soiled with mud and food scraps slipped on the uneven ground. His heart was beating loudly, and deep down he knew he was about to see the result of his cowardice. Between 2 tents, a makeshift structure of sheets and cardboard boxes swayed in the wind. He approached slowly. He heard a low, choked voice, almost a whisper. "Shh, Mom's here. Are you hungry, my love? Mommy will tell you a story." And then, silence. Just the sound of the wind and the plastic shaking. He stopped. It stood still. It was her, sitting on the floor, wrapped in dirty blankets, her head leaning against a cardboard box, her face pale, her eyes closed. Karen, thin, dehydrated, breathing hard. Her lips moved without making a sound, as if praying. The world stopped for a moment, because sometimes, in the midst of chaos, fate is silent, just so that we can listen to what we have ignored for too long. If you got this far feeling your heart tighten, stay with me until the end. Because the most humane, the most brutal, and the most beautiful moment is yet to come. Ryan knelt down, not knowing what to say. He touched her shoulder carefully. She was startled, opened her eyes slowly, trying to recognize that face. He just said, "Karen." But what she answered, with a choked voice and bleary eyes, was not what he expected. Because there, at that moment, she no longer knew what reality was, and what was memory. Karen was huddled in a damp corner under the Alameda Street overpass, protected only by 2 torn blankets and cardboard boxes stacked like a wall against the icy wind sweeping through the concrete. The rain from the night before still ran down the metal beams, dripping rhythmically on the dirty, rough floor. Her body trembled with fever, her lips chapped, her skin pale, and her eyes closed as if they refused to see more of the world. Each cough was accompanied by a hoarse, dry sound, and when she put her hand to her mouth, the bright red of blood stained her palm and hope. Still, even in delirium, her arms held a blanket with almost sacred delicacy, as if protecting something that was not seen. Maybe a baby, maybe a memory. Ryan knelt slowly, his knees touching the wet cement. The lights of the cars above flashed through the cracks of the overpass, casting alternating shadows over his face, as if the world was still testing his guilt. When she reached out and touched Karen's shoulder, she reacted with a weak start, opening her eyes slowly, as if waking up from a nightmare that never ended. And when she saw him there, so close, her pupils dilated with amazement, pain, and incredulity. Did you come to laugh in my face?" she murmured, her voice hoarse. "Now that the whole city calls me crazy, of a baby thief." "No, Karen, I came to get you." She turned her face, coughed again, the dry sound cutting through the silence. "Leaving me with nothing, without a license, without work. And now you want me to trust." "I didn't come as a boss. I came as a father, like a man who made a big mistake, that he judged before listening, that he was afraid of losing control, and lost everything." Ryan's voice trembled. He lowered his head for a moment, then stared back at her. "Noah is bad, Karen. He stopped eating, rejects formula, rejects lap. He cries all the time, and now he only sleeps. But it is not a peaceful sleep. It's a sleep of giving up." Karen stared at him in silence, her face dirty with soot and sweat, her eyes with the light almost extinguished. "It was you who gave life to it, when it was withering. It wasn't me. He wasn't a doctor. He wasn't a babysitter. It was you. And I cast you out." He took a deep breath. "But I'm here, and I'm not leaving without you." Karen swallowed, her eyes watering. "And when your mother knocks on the door, when your neighbors look askance, when they say I'm a danger—" Ryan moved closer, his voice breaking. "If that happens, I'll go with you. Wherever you go, I won't leave you again. I'm not going to let him lose you." She closed her eyes for a moment, as if she heard something inside her chest. And when she opened them, tears flowed silently, washing away the pain stuck to her face. "Does he really need me? More than anyone?" The wind blew harder, and Karen shrank instinctively. Ryan removed his coat from his body and covered her shoulders carefully, as if it wrapped around something fragile and sacred. For the first time since they got lost, she couldn't resist the touch. She stood there, quiet, breathing in the smell of clean cotton, so different from the dust that had enveloped her for weeks. For a few seconds, they said nothing. It was as if the words had given way to what really mattered: presence. And there, in that forgotten piece of the city, under the concrete stained with abandonment, a choice was made. Because there are gestures that do not need a promise, they need courage. But what Ryan didn't know yet is that returning with Karen also meant facing an entire world willing to destroy her again. And this time, the enemies wouldn't just be outside. The room was too white, too quiet, cold as a waiting room for something that should never happen to a baby. Noah, too small to understand what he felt, lay motionless in the hospital crib, his skin pale and his lips parched. Monitors blew their whistles to the side as a constant reminder that time there wasn't just precious, it was dangerous. A doctor watched the numbers on the display. A nurse was adjusting the IV with tired eyes. Everyone seemed to do what was possible, but even what was possible was no longer enough. In the hallway, Ryan's footsteps echoed in a hurry. He held Karen's medical record in his hands, trembling. Behind him, the stretcher with her was advancing quickly, pushed by two paramedics. The fever still consumed his body, his eyes half closed, his breath short. But she muttered, almost unconsciously, "Noah." "My boy!" The doctors rushed. Antibiotics, nebulizer, way. She didn't have insurance. She didn't have documents. But Ryan held up his wallet and said, "I'll cover everything. Save her." 2 hours later, Karen was asleep. But his face was no longer pale. The color was starting to come back. The eyes, even closed, seemed less heavy. And when the doctor came in and examined her signs, she nodded. "She's going to survive." Ryan sat next to her. He observed his tired face, his disheveled hair, his still-stained street uniform, and he thought of everything she had done. For him, by Noah, for a son who was not his, but who became. When Karen opened her eyes, the room was quiet. She blinked slowly, trying to understand. "Where?" "You're in the hospital. I brought you. You were sick, with a fever, but now it's better." She took a deep breath. He coughed, but weak. "And Noah?" Ryan smiled, teary-eyed. "He's in the next room. Doctors said he has not yet reacted, but I think he misses you." Karen tried to get up, but her body hurt. Still, with the help of the nurse, she sat down slowly. "I need to see him." Moments later, the corridors of the hospital seemed to breathe along with her. Every step Karen took was a miracle of endurance, of love, of invisible strength. She wore a thin nightgown, her legs trembling, her face pale, but her eyes, the eyes had a new strength. When he opened the door to Noah's room, time stopped. The baby was there, lying down, breathing slowly, the dull skin, her eyes half open, the serum attached to the arm. Ryan watched from the corner, silently. Karen approached slowly. "Hi, my love. Mom has arrived." Her voice was weak but sweet. The sound filled the air invisibly, like a perfume that only the heart recognizes. Noah moved his little fingers. Then he turned his head, with effort, in the direction of his voice. And then, with a light sigh, he stretched out his little arms. The nurse who accompanied the scene put her hand to her mouth, surprised. My God! He recognized it. Karen approached the crib. Ryan helped pick it up carefully. The baby's little body nestled in her arms, as if she had come home. She opened her nightgown slowly, and for the first time in days, he suckled. The silence turned into reverence. The machines began to register the change. Stronger beats, temperature stabilizing, oxygenation rising. Noah sucked hungrily, but also with relief, as someone who rediscovers the only thing he understands in the world. The nurse, with watering eyes, whispered, "I've never seen anything like this." Karen cried silently. Tears that weren't just tears of emotion, they were tears of healing. Tears that washed away the days of abandonment, the nights of fear, the dark corners where no one had ever looked for her. Ryan, leaning against the wall, watched without saying a word. I just felt it. I felt everything I had never allowed myself to feel. The weight of wrong decisions, the value of a woman the world chose to ignore, and the beauty of something that cannot be explained with logic, only with love. And if you've come this far with an open heart, feeling this story as if it were yours too, know the most transformative moment is yet to come, because there, in that hospital room, a life was saved. But the world outside, he was already preparing to try to destroy this reunion, and the next door that would open, it would not be welcome. The sun was rising again in Beverly Hills, gilding the windows of the Mitchell mansion as if it wanted to purify everything that had been corrupted by neglect, arrogance, silence. Karen walked slowly through the halls, with Noah nestled in her lap, while the baby's curious eyes seemed to recognize every corner as if he were returning to a home he should never have left. Ryan followed them silently, with a briefcase in hand and a lump in his throat. Upstairs, the old guest room was now being prepared by decorators, painters and carpenters. A new crib, pastel curtains, a closet full of clothes. But Karen was not impressed by the furniture. She watched the intentions. and for the first time, she felt that she was not just another employee, another shadow. He felt that there, his existence was beginning to be seen. In the living room, sitting across from each other, Ryan opened the documents. "Here is the contract. You will have a fair salary, complete health insurance, controlled hours, and his room is next to Noah's room. I want you to feel safe." Karen nodded, calmly but not submissively. She looked into his eyes, firmly. "I accept, but on one condition." He frowned. "Of course, you can tell." She took a deep breath. The silence lasted longer than he expected, and when her voice came, it was low, but loaded with truth. "I want to be legally recognized as Noah's mother." Ryan froze. The phrase reverberated like thunder on a cloudless day. He looked at her, trying to understand if it was a metaphor or a real request. But Karen's eyes left no doubt. It was not a whim. It was conviction. "Karen, this is serious. More than anything I've ever lived." She placed Noah on her lap, who slept peacefully against her chest. "I'm not asking to take his mother's place. I'm asking to have the right to continue being what I already am. He recognizes me, calls me speechlessly, and I would give my life for this boy. You know that." Ryan was silent for long seconds. Then he lowered his eyes, defeated by the weight of truth. "I'm going to talk to my lawyers. I don't promise it will be simple, but I'll try." Before he could say anything else, the doorbell rang. Twice. And then the door opened. Ashley. She walked in as if she had never left, smiling, with perfect hair, her expensive bag on her shoulder, and her falsely sweet eyes. "Ryan, honey. I heard that the nurse left. I thought I might need help with Noah again." Karen stood up slowly, protecting the baby with her body. Ashley gave her a quick, suspicious look. Ryan, however, wasted no time. "You shouldn't be here." She feigned surprise. "What do you mean? I just came to help. I care about Noah." "Is that so?" He pulled a USB stick from his pocket. He put it on TV. Within seconds, photos of boxes of children's medicine posted on eBay appeared on the screen. The name of the seller? Ashley McCoy. "Do you recognize that? The police have already recognized it. They're coming here soon." Ashley turned pale. "This is a mistake. Never have I ever. I was desperate, Ryan. I needed money." "You sold his antibiotic while saying you went to buy formula. He could have died, Ashley. And do you prefer this one?" She pointed at Karen contemptuously. "An undocumented cleaner who appears breastfeeding your child like crazy?" The silence was more cutting than a slap. Karen didn't answer. I didn't even need to. Ryan walked up to Ashley and pointed to the door. "I left my house now. The police are already on their way. And if you try to get close to Noah again, I'm going to file a criminal case myself." Ashley still tried to argue, but Ryan's eyes were different, hard, clear. For the first time, he saw. I saw everything. When she left, Karen sat down again on the couch, exhausted. Ryan slowly approached and said, "I should have done it sooner. I'm sorry." Karen looked at him. "I don't want your guilt. I want your action." And that night, for the first time, she slept on a clean mattress, with a soft pillow, covered with scented sheets and with Noah breathing peacefully by her side. But what she didn't imagine was that outside that house, even more powerful forces were moving, ready to prevent her from actually becoming the mother of that boy. It was a morning of clear skies and gentle wind, but inside the gated community of Beverly Heights, the air was charged with something invisible: judgment. Karen pushed Noah's stroller down the light stone sidewalk with discreet steps, as she always did. But now, the eyes no longer disguised themselves. It wasn't like before when she was ignored. Now she was watched, commented, weighted on silent scales. The lady at number 7, with her hair tied in an impeccable bun and a poodle on her lap, whispered to her neighbor while pretending to take care of the flowers. "It's her, the one that Ryan brought from the street. They say he slept on an overpass." The other nodded, pursing her lips. "And he's living with him, with the baby, as if she were a wife. But she's a cleaner, right? We don't understand these things." Emails began to circulate discreetly among the condominium owners. Subjects such as "safety and coexistence in Block B" or update on staff and visitors served as a curtain for the real content. Indirect complaints about the new nanny, who used the common areas as if she were a resident, who walked with Mr. Mitchell's son as if he were her own. Karen felt it. Every gesture, every exaggerated pause of conversation as she passed, every door that closed with subtle force right behind. But he did not react. She knew that dignity was sometimes silence and resistance. At the condominium meeting, organized to discuss the security of the main entrance, the subject deviated. An older resident, wearing a beige blazer and pearls, asked to speak, taking advantage of the fact that Mr. Mitchell is present. Some neighbors are a little uncomfortable with certain recent behaviors. Ryan, sitting at the table next to Karen, looked up. What would these behaviors be? Well, the employee you brought to your home. It has acted in a way too intimate with the baby, and many families here are not comfortable with that. A small murmur spread, subtle and poisonous. Karen felt her face heat up, but she remained silent, holding Noah in her lap. Ryan took a deep breath. He got up slowly. Her eyes rolled around the room. I know exactly what you are talking about, and I want to say this very clearly. The woman you are judging without knowing, he is the person who saved my son's life. Twice. The silence that followed was thick, almost solid. When Ashley disappeared and Noah was dehydrated, she was the one who fed him. When the doctor said that my son was collapsing, she was the one who healed him with her lap, with her chest, with her presence. This woman is not here for charity. She is here because she is needed. Some people lowered their eyes. Others kept their eyes hard. But among the faces paralyzed by prejudice, one or another expression softened, and then he concluded, "You can judge me if you want, but my house, my son, my choice, it's her." The phrase reverberated. Later, at the bakery down the block, the Latin waitress, who had been serving all the locals for years, approached Karen and smiled shyly. "It was beautiful what he did. Beautiful what you did too. I'm rooting for you." She smiled back, her eyes moist. Not for the compliment, but for being seen as someone real, even if it was for seconds. There are things that we live and keep, but maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. Like this video and sign up, and let's make this story reach those who need it. In the following days, the atmosphere gradually changed. There were still crooked looks, yes, but there were also shy greetings, doors that no longer closed in anger. The cleaning lady that many treated as a shadow began to be seen as what she had always been, a woman with soul, courage, and courage. But not everyone would accept this change easily, because there was a letter being written in secret, a powerful name behind it, and when Karen received that summons, the ground she believed she had regained would begin to shake again. The morning was grey, covered in low clouds over Los Angeles, when Karen put on her light blue blouse, smoothed her hair with her hands still damp, and walked down the stairs of Ryan's house, holding Noah to her chest. He was already asleep, as he always did after breastfeeding, with his face glued to her lap, as if that beating sound was the only safe place in the world. Karen didn't say it, but that baby was the only thing that made her wake up on her feet every day, even with the silent fear that lurked in the back of her thoughts. Downstairs, Ryan finished talking to the lawyer on the phone. They were ready to start the process, a process that no one there quite knew how to name. It was not traditional adoption. He was no ordinary guard. It was something in between, a legal request that would allow Karen to be officially recognized as a caregiver with effective rights. Mother of bond, as the social worker said, and the hardest was to explain this to the system. The social worker, Maria Thompson, arrived punctually at 9 a.m., grey blazer, clipboard in hand, and a firm look that seemed to pierce words. He sat at the kitchen table with the two of them and began to ask questions. First to Ryan, Noah's background, routine, medical history, then Karen. Full name? Karen Cristina de Almeida. Country of origin? Brazil. Current immigration status? Karen swallowed. Irregular. but with a request for regularization in progress. Maria wrote it down without expressing an opinion. Then he looked at Karen calmly. Do you understand that legally this baby has a living father, and that you, as much as you have an emotional bond, have no blood ties with him? Karen nodded, looking at Noah in her lap. I know. Then why this request? Karen was slow to answer. The voice came out low but sure. Because I know abandonment. Because I know what it's like to be forgotten in a corner. Because when he was about to faint, I was the one who heard it. When no one else knew what to do, I was the one who understood what he needed. I don't want to take anything from his father. I just want that if one day he changes his mind, I can continue to take care of him. Even if he gets married, even if he changes countries, even if the whole world says it's not my son, I want to have the right to continue loving him. Maria stopped writing. For an instant, silence reigned, and it was at that moment that her eyes lit up. Thank you for responding with such truth. There are stories that don't fit into the roles, and that was one of them. And if you are here following all this, I ask you, do not give up on this story now, because what will happen when the whole truth comes out, no one imagines. The hearing was scheduled for 21 days later. Time ran slowly, as if the universe wanted to test the courage of everyone involved. But it was in this interval that the shadow of the past reappeared, with the brutality of a storm in the middle of summer. It was a Saturday morning when Ryan received the unexpected visitor. A tall man, wearing a cap, a shabby t-shirt, and a mocking smile, appeared at the gate of the mansion. The doorman intercomed, saying that he asked to speak to the father of the Latino baby. The phrase sounded like a punch. Ryan went downstairs. He found the man leaning against the wall, chewing gum disdainfully. You're the good boss, right? Who took the cleaning lady to raise as a queen? Ryan frowned. Who are you? Your darling's ex-husband, father of her dead son, the one that no one buried properly. The anger came in a second, but Ryan kept his cool. And what do you want? Money. The man crossed his arms. About 10,000 and I'm gone. If not, maybe I'll go to court to tell some stories about Karen. From when she worked in a bar, from when she drank, from some crises she had. The judge may want to know about these things, right? Ryan looked hard at him. Do you have proof of anything? I don't need to. I just need to talk. In a custody process, it is enough to raise doubts. At that time, everything about Ryan wanted to break that facade. But he thought of Karen, in Noah, what they were building. He went back inside, called the lawyer and the police. The man was removed from the neighborhood for attempted extortion, but the damage was done. Ryan knew it could spill over, and what scared him the most was, could Karen weather this storm again? That night, he told her everything. Sitting side by side on the sofa in the living room, Karen listened in silence. He was not surprised. He just sighed. I knew he would come. It always comes when it sees that I'm back on my feet. Do you want to drop the lawsuit? She looked up. Do you want it? No. So we face it. But what neither of them knew, it was that the following week, a surprise witness would appear in court, and with her, a secret buried in Karen's past would come to light, with enough force to put everything to waste. The Los Angeles courthouse was full that morning, the wooden benches creaking under the weight of onlookers and neighbors who had come to watch the case that was already spreading like a rumor on the streets of Beverly Hills. Karen entered with restrained steps, her head held high, but her heart racing. She wore a simple navy blue dress borrowed by Marie, the Haitian lady who had given her shelter months ago. The fabric was not new, but she seemed shrouded in dignity. Noah, small and restless, stood on Ryan's lap, who was walking close behind, as if to protect her from any cross gaze. When they sat down, the silence of the room was broken only by the judge's firm voice. Let's hear the custody case of minor Noah Mitchell. Ryan's lawyer explained the situation, describing the absence of the birth mother and Karen's vital importance in the baby's survival. But before she could conclude, the back door opened, and a man walked in with slow steps and a smile of triumph. Karen's ex-husband. Your Honor, I asked to be heard, he said, and the judge allowed it. Her voice carried venom. "This woman does not deserve any rights over any child. She lost her own child because she used drugs during pregnancy. He fled the hospital in shame. I know because I was there." The room was in shock. Karen kept her gaze fixed on the floor, but her rapid breathing betrayed the reopened wound. Ryan squeezed her shoulder. "You don't have to be afraid. The truth is with you." The lawyer asked the judge that Karen could speak. She stood up, her hands trembling but her voice clear. "It's a lie. I didn't use anything. My baby died because I waited 3 hours in a cold hospital room, begging for a cesarean section that never came. I screamed, cried, asked for help. It's all recorded." With a gesture, she handed the lawyer a worn briefcase. Inside, the medical records of Los Angeles County Hospital. The notes were clear: delay in the procedure, fetal suffering, hospital negligence. The judge flipped through each page, silence dominating the room. The ex-husband began to sweat, anger overflowing in his eyes. She made it all up to victimize herself. But the judge interrupted him. "Enough. The documents are official and confirm Mrs. Almeida's account. Their accusations are baseless," the audience murmured, torn between surprise and indignation. Karen took a deep breath, tears flowing silently, but without breaking her posture. It was as if at that moment she did not defend only herself, but all the invisible women who carried guilt that was not hers. Ryan stood up and held his hand in front of everyone. There was no shame, only pride. The judge hit the gavel. "This court recognizes the importance of the emotional bond between Mrs. Karen Almeida and the child Noah Mitchell. I grant shared legal co-custody, emphasizing the integrity, resilience and love shown by the applicant." A collective sigh ran through the room. Karen closed her eyes, feeling the weight of years dissolve. The ex-husband left enraged, defeated. Noah, as if understanding, babbled cheerful sounds, stretching out his little arms to her. At that moment, justice was not just on paper. It was in truth recognized, in love validated in front of all. But little did Karen know that winning inside a courtroom didn't mean the world outside would accept her without further battles. Because there were still hard hearts and sharp tongues ready to spread new shadows over his history. What would happen when the fighting left the walls of the courthouse and returned to the streets of the neighborhood? The sun poured in through the windows of the Beverly Hills mansion in a different way, gilding the once cold furniture and illuminating the toys scattered across the living room floor. The sound that used to echo there was only silence and crying. Now it was Noah's light laugh, running back and forth with stumbling steps, calling out, "Mommy and Daddy." Karen, in a simple apron, set the breakfast table, placing still warm pancakes, while looking at her son with a twinkle in her eye that mixed gratitude and victory. In the background, Ryan was brewing coffee, shirt rolled up in a less formal way than before, as if life had torn off his masks one by one. It was another house, another home. And it was almost impossible to believe that months ago, that same space had been a field of pain, suspicion, and silence. Now, it smelled of fresh coffee, there were colorful toys on the carpet, there was life. Karen, in addition to her work as a caregiver, had enrolled in a night nursing course. He borrowed books from the public library and studied late with Noah sleeping next to him. "I want him to grow up proud of the mother he has," she said quietly, flipping through pages, underlining words that sounded difficult, but that for her meant liberation. Ryan watched her, often in silence, feeling a respect that had already surpassed any obligation be borne. He was beginning to realize that it wasn't just gratitude, it was something that grew slowly but steadily, like a root sticking in the ground. Noah, in turn, flourished. He was no longer the apathetic baby he was a few days ago. He was a boy, full of energy, with bright eyes and a smile that conquered even the most resistant neighbors. Calling Karen Mommy had become natural, and calling Ryan Daddy no longer sounded strange. The bond was there, stronger than any document could prove. It was a family, even if formed in pain, even if forged in scars. But Karen still had reservations. One night, While putting away the dishes in the kitchen, Ryan slowly approached. "Karen," she said quietly, "sometimes I feel like life has given me a second chance, and that you're part of it." She was silent, drying her hands with the tea towel. He knew where those words could lead. He took a deep breath. "I don't want to pressure you. Just wanted to let you know." Karen stared at him. His eyes, still scarred by the past, shone steadily. "If it's meant to be, it's going to be. But right now, Ryan, my priority is Noah. He is everything." Ryan nodded, respecting. There was no hurry, there was no room for illusions, but something deep in their hearts already knew that fate was writing a different story. The mornings were chaotic and beautiful. Noah spilled milk, scattered toys, laughed out loud. Karen packed her backpack for class, while Ryan hurried to meetings. But in the midst of the rush, there were hugs, there were looks that did not exist before. A new life was being built. The mansion was no longer just a luxury address in Beverly Hills. It was a house with the smell of bread, with small footsteps running down the hallway, with voices that called each other not out of obligation, but out of love. And yet, in the midst of that conquered peace, there was a question that no one dared to say out loud. Would the outside world accept this unlikely family? Because the neighbors' gazes still followed Karen as she passed by with Noah on her lap, and whispered conversations still echoed in condo meetings. And fate, as always, seemed to hold one last test for them to face together. Karen sat on the edge of the bed, watching Noah asleep, his delicate eyelashes resting on his flushed cheeks, his light breath filling the room with a peace she had never known before. For a moment, her mind went back to the son she had lost, to the pain that seemed unbearable, and to the loneliness of the cold streets of Los Angeles. And yet, there she was, her arms full of life again. "Maybe God gave me a second chance," he whispered, feeling the tears wet his eyes. But now, tears that didn't just carry sadness, they also carried gratitude. Ryan walked in slowly, bringing a blanket that he placed on her shoulders. The look they exchanged didn't ask for words. He knew she had saved not only Noah, but him as well, pulling him out of the void in which he lived. "You saved his life, but you also saved mine," he said quietly. Karen smiled humbly, as if carrying the strength of many women who have fought in silence. And it is at this point that we understand, sometimes mothers are not born from the womb. They are born from pain, courage, and faith. This story reminds us that even invisible, the simplest of people, can carry the force of a miracle within themselves. Thank you for staying here with me, for following every step of this journey. Your like is like a hug that warms up and supports this channel, and your subscription is an invitation to meet again at the next cafe, always with stories that deserve to be heard. Write there in the comments of which city you are watching. I really want to know how far this voice reaches, and don't forget to activate the bell so you don't miss it when the coffee is ironed again. Don't go away yet. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story.